While the Chiefs were in the midst of getting blown out during Super Bowl 59, with dreams of a three-peat quickly being erased from history, it seemed like the entire NFL community, outside of Kansas City, was enjoying their meteoric downfall on television's biggest stage. Even before the first snap of the game, there was endless chatter of NFL fans saying they weren't going to be watching the game this year, football fans saying they'd be boycotting this game, and endless accusations that this whole thing is rigged. Now, obviously those first 2 points aren't true because, as always, the Super Bowl set viewership records for the third time in 3 years, all games where the Chiefs participated. Following the loss, there were Chiefs lost upvote parties on subreddits of division rivals, which is to be expected. People saying that this was the most enjoyable blowout they've ever watched, that America owes the Eagles a debt of gratitude, and that this game was the most gratifying hate watch that has taken place for a Super Bowl matchup since maybe the Patriots and the Eagles in 2017. I mean, even a video of Jalen Carter getting a hit on Mahomes, posted 3 months after the Super Bowl, was still being flooded with comments of NFL fans talking about how satisfying that was to watch. And it's not like the Eagles are the most well-liked team either. I mean, on an average NFL fan's hate scale, they might be top 3 or even second most hated team in the league. It's just that the Chiefs have become so disliked that it didn't matter who they played, as long as they lost. It kind of reminds me of this clip from Charles Barkley.
I told you, if they played Afghanistan, I'd be pulling for Afghanistan.
Oh, no.
Now, I'm neither a Chiefs or an Eagles fan, so I really have no dog in this fight. But this widespread response really made me start to think, why do we all hate the Chiefs now? This type of response to a dynastic team isn't anything new or distinct to the Chiefs. I mean, we saw this just recently with the Patriots in the 2010s, and again before that in the 2000s. Simply put, everyone hated them. But for a team that was so beloved when they first started on this run, how has the pendulum swung so far in the other direction? While I was researching for this video, there were 8 common reasons that I found when evaluating the NFL community's general feelings towards the Chiefs, which I'll be unveiling one by one from the Chiefs' 2018 to 2024 seasons. And to help me keep track of this general consensus level of hate towards the Chiefs, starting in 2018, I introduce the state-of-the-art, purely scientific, patent-pending hate index meter. This will help me keep track of the NFL community's level of hatreds towards the Chiefs, starting at the opposite end of hate, represented by Luke Kuechly, and gradually moving all the way up to the Tom Brady, Bill Belichick era Patriots. Oh, and there's another tier above that, but that's saved for one person and one person only, so we'll ignore that for now. But before we get to 2018, let's see how the Chiefs got here in the first place. The start of all of this was in 2013, when Andy Reid agreed to become the head coach for the Kansas City Chiefs following a 14-year run in Philadelphia. Even though Reid saw great success in Philly, leading the Eagles to 9 playoff appearances, 6 division titles, 5 NFC championship games, and a Super Bowl appearance in the 04-05 season, he was fired after the 2012 season after the Eagles failed to make the playoffs in consecutive years. Although the Chiefs didn't reach their first Super Bowl of their dynasty run until 2019, without Andy Reid, there's no dynasty to begin with. From 2013 to 2017, the Chiefs went 53-27 with 4 playoff appearances in those 5 seasons, but only won 1 playoff game during that stretch. Then starting in 2018, Mahomes' first full year, is where the Chiefs took off. Mahomes threw for 5,000 yards, 50 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, was first team All-Pro, and won his first MVP. The Chiefs went 12-4 and had a first-round bye. They handedly beat the Colts in the divisional round, then lost the AFC Championship game to the Patriots in overtime. This team was electric, and with a terrible defense that year, they were forced to chase explosive plays and were constantly in shootouts, including one of the best Monday Night Football games of all time against the Rams, where they ended up losing 54-51. This team was the hottest new thing in the league. People praised Mahomes when he won MVP, and many mentioned that they didn't want to know what the next 10 to 15 years of the AFC West would look like. There were highlights after highlights after highlights, and the Chiefs were undeniably fun to watch and the NFL's newest darling. So, after 2018, the Chiefs' hate meter was as low as it could get. And moving on to 2019 is where the Chiefs etched the first mark in their dynasty stone. Compared to the prior season, the Chiefs took a significant step back in terms of total offensive yardage, with Mahomes barely throwing over 4,000 yards. But with the addition of new defensive coordinator Steve Spagnuolo, Kansas City's defense took a huge leap from 24th in points against to 7th. This team ended up winning the Super Bowl after an amazing comeback against the Texans in the divisional round after going down 24-0 and coming back to win the game 51-31. Then coming back down 10 against the Titans in the AFC Championship game, and then capping it off with a fourth quarter masterclass in the Super Bowl against the 49ers for this core's first Lombardi. People were happy for Andy Reid finally getting over the hump and winning his first ring. So again, even at this point, I think there was little to no hate for the Chiefs from the NFL community outside of the teams that they beat on this run, but that doesn't count. After the Chiefs' 2019 Super Bowl season, I don't think the hate scales changed positions. People were happy for Mahomes, they were happy for Reid, and they were happy for the entire Chiefs core to secure their first ring, and they had a great playoff run, earning every single win in each of the games they played. But 2020 is where we see the hate meter begin to see its first bit of action. The Chiefs picked up their offense from the previous year, with Mahomes throwing for 4,700 yards, 38 touchdowns to 6 interceptions, along with both Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce going for over 1,200 receiving yards, and both making first-team All-Pro. Their defense was again top 10 in points against, which gave this team the solid baseline it needed to achieve a 14-2 regular season record and a first-round bye. But this is where I'll bring up common complaint number one we hear about when talking about why the Chiefs are disliked, which is that they're always on national TV and the overexposure of this team throughout the years. In the 2020-2021 season, the Chiefs were slotted for the max amount of primetime games at 5, but they actually ended up playing 6 due to a COVID-delayed game that was moved into a Monday Night Football slot. And evaluating this from 2018 until the 2024 season, the Chiefs have played 43 regular season primetime games, which include games played on Sunday Night Football, Monday Night Football, Thursday Night Football, holiday games, and certain Saturday matchups. And this doesn't even include their playoff games, which since 2018, the Chiefs have played in 21 playoff games, including 5 Super Bowls. So including playoff matchups, the Chiefs have played 64 primetime games, where I'm guessing most of the NFL community sat and watched because there was football on. Even with that being said, we really didn't see the negative effects of this overexposure too heavily beyond the fact that they were always on TV at that point in time. But the one thing that really did start to get on people's nerves at that time is common complaint number 2 we hear about when talking about why the Chiefs are disliked, which is the announcer glaze from Mahomes and its most notorious culprit, Chris Collinsworth. In the game thread for the Chiefs' last 2020 regular season primetime matchup against the Broncos, 9 out of the top 50 comments were complaining about Collinsworth's incessant praise for Mahomes, including these comments. But it's not just Collinsworth. We also hear Tony Romo saying things like, "a little Mahomie, way too much." So when you're forced to watch a team over and over again on primetime, and constantly hearing things like this,
I wonder which spaceship he brought to the stadium. This alien is doing it again.
or this,
And that is sort of what we see out of Patrick Mahomes. Jordan Love hanging in
or
there.
this,
That was a heck of a play by Mahomes right there.
you're going to start to get annoyed, even if it's not the Chiefs doing anything wrong per se. In the game threads from years past, there were mentions of this announcer bias here and there, but I think it reached a new level in the 2020 season, and it only got worse in following years. The Chiefs made it back to the Super Bowl where they matched up against the Tom Brady-led Buccaneers and lost in a one-sided game where the Chiefs' O-line just couldn't keep up with the Buccaneers' pass rush. So far in Mahomes' career, the only quarterback he's lost to in the playoffs is Tom Brady. And that doesn't really have any influence on this video, I just thought it was a fun fact. One more thing from this season that I think could have had a little bit of sway towards the negative consensus feeling against the Chiefs is an incomplete pass during the fourth quarter that bounced off Darrell Williams' face mask where Mahomes was parallel to the ground when he threw it. I mean, this was an objectively cool play, but I think the fact that an incomplete pass in the midst of a Super Bowl blowout got that much publicity could have potentially rubbed some people the wrong way. So, taking a look at the hate meter at the end of the 2020 season, I'd say we've moved up one negativity notch towards towards Steelers' Juju Smith-Schuster level. We're not at dislike or even close to hate yet, but there's definitely a little bit of annoyance that could be felt throughout the NFL community. Now, let's move on to the 2021 Chiefs season. The Chiefs got off to a rocky start this year with a 3-4 record through the first 7 weeks, but they proceeded to go 9-1 the remainder of the season to end the year out with a 12-5 record. The Chiefs' defense was terrible in the beginning of the year, especially in the first 5 weeks, where they gave up an average of 32.6 points per game, but they course-corrected to end the year out in 8th in points against. Their offense was humming as usual, with 30.8 points per game in the first 5 weeks, and eventually ended the season 4th in points per game at 28.2. Although he threw for 2,093 yards and 18 touchdowns during the first 7 weeks, Patrick Mahomes' 9 interceptions were less than ideal. Yet, with only 5 more interceptions compared to 19 touchdowns during the final 10 games, Mahomes still ended the season with 4,839 passing yards, 37 touchdowns, and 13 interceptions. The Chiefs again had the max amount of primetime games this season, so it was more exposure like I had previously mentioned. But this season also introduced common complaint number 3 we hear about when talking about why the Chiefs are disliked, and that's the external characters. Let's say hi to Brittany Mahomes, Jackson Mahomes, and a few years later, Taylor Swift. We saw some of these characters really break out onto the scene in the 2021 season, with Jackson Mahomes catching flack for filming a TikTok dance on Sean Taylor's memorial logo on the Commanders' sideline before a game. Brittany Mahomes spraying a bottle of champagne from a suite onto a bunch of Chiefs fans below her after a playoff win, and Taylor Swift honestly not really doing anything, just being there, which makes a lot of people mad. Here's some hard-hitting analysis done by Reddit user JP Analyst, who tracked the number of times Taylor Swift was shown on camera, along with the duration, during every Chiefs playoff game during their 2023 and 2024 playoff runs. Given that the average NFL playoff broadcast is over 3 hours long, I personally don't think that one of the most famous people in the world being shown on TV for less than a minute a game should bother NFL fans that much. But I digress. The 2021 Chiefs playoff run was definitely memorable. After putting the beatdown on the Steelers in what was Ben Roethlisberger's last game, we were treated to one of the greatest playoff games of all time, where the Bills and the Chiefs faced off in the divisional round. This game had 4 lead changes and 25 points scored in the final 2 minutes of regulation, where the Chiefs secured the victory in overtime. This game also prompted a rule change implemented the following postseason, where both teams are guaranteed at least 1 possession in overtime. In the AFC Championship game, after going up 21-3 midway through the second quarter, the Bengals roared back to win the game in overtime, 27-24, and punched their ticket to the Super Bowl. Mahomes had a terrible second half and overtime, throwing for only 55 yards and giving up 2 interceptions while the Bengals defense locked in, which led to multiple times in the second half where receivers were just blanketed by Cincinnati's coverage downfield. Although the Chiefs didn't make it back to the Super Bowl this year, they still had regular season success and an iconic playoff game in their holster. As far as the hate meter is concerned, with yet another year of overexposure, more announcer glaze, and new side characters jumping onto the scene, I think we can confidently move them up another notch towards the CJ Gardner-Johnson level of hate. Moving forward to the 2022 Chiefs season, Patrick Mahomes won his second MVP, throwing for 5,250 yards, 41 passing touchdowns to 12 interceptions, and 4 touchdowns on the ground. Travis Kelce had 1,338 receiving yards, which was by far the most on the team, especially after Tyreek Hill was traded to the Dolphins in the offseason for a first, second, 2 fourths, and a 6th-round pick. Chris Jones had a dominant season with 15.5 sacks, making first team All-Pro, and ending 3rd in the Defensive Player of the Year voting. The Chiefs went 14-3 this season, scoring 29.2 points per game, and earned themselves a first-round bye and a divisional round matchup against the Jaguars. Now let's introduce common complaint number 4, which honestly could have been brought up in the past few seasons, which is the insufferable fan base. Much like any fan base of a consistent winner, you're going to start to annoy the broader NFL community just for the sole fact that you're happy and that you're cheering for a winner. There's always going to be examples of bad apples in the Chiefs fan base posting wild shit on Twitter or doing a woe is me or we're so slept on act, but that's every single fan base. But a valid complaint is all of the fans that became bandwagon Chiefs fans because of Mahomes and the Chiefs' success in the past seasons that actually don't know how to act and are truly annoying. But all in all, we were just more annoyed by this particular fan base because, again, they're winning. And a lot of this hate towards Chiefs fans is just redirected hate towards the Chiefs themselves. But regardless, this was a widespread feeling, so it must be acknowledged here. Moving on to the playoffs, the Chiefs' first round matchup was close, and Mahomes hurt his right ankle towards the end of the first half and had to go in the locker room for an x-ray, but finished out the game with just under 200 passing yards and 2 touchdowns. And while Mahomes was out of the game, Chad Henne stepped in and led the Chiefs on a long touchdown drive, starting at their own 2-yard line, which actually ended up being the longest postseason touchdown drive in Chiefs history. This set up a rematch against the Bengals in the AFC Championship game for a trip to the Super Bowl on the line. The Chiefs went into halftime with a 13-6 lead, and the Bengals were able to tie up the game 20-20 at the end of the third quarter. Then it was all defense from there, with the next point being scored with only 3 seconds left in the game off of a game-winning field goal by Harrison Butker. The Chiefs were able to get into that field goal position after Joseph Asai pushed Mahomes while he was running out of bounds, leading to a 15-yard unnecessary roughness penalty. Now for common complaint number 5, I didn't know whether to bring this up now or later, so let's just do it now. The refs. Amongst all of the common complaints that I've covered, and the ones I'll get to later, this one is the most talked about and the most highly evidenced. Now there are many examples of when we as football fans turn a side eye towards a call that has gone in the Chiefs' favor, and there are endless examples from before and after this game. But let's go into some of these accusations of ref ball during this AFC Championship game matchup. One of the most egregious offenses we saw during this game was in the fourth quarter, where before a failed Chiefs third down attempt, the refs attempted to stop the play due to a game clock issue. But this attempted stoppage wasn't heard by either team. So even though the third down attempt was fully ran and the Chiefs didn't convert, they were given another opportunity and ended up converting on their second try. And again in the fourth quarter, there were 2 interesting calls against the Bengals that had neutral fans questioning what was going on. There was a roughing the passer call that should have been called on Frank Clark, but wasn't, and then an intentional grounding call that was called against the Bengals when it probably shouldn't have. The unnecessary roughness call at the end of the game was legitimate, but when you have so many bad calls leading up to that moment, people are going to be mad. Now in the Super Bowl, after what was an amazing back and forth game, free from a lot of ref interference, on 3rd and 8, with 1 minute and 54 seconds left in the fourth quarter, with the game tied up 35-35, the refs called defensive holding on Eagles corner James Bradbury, which gave the Chiefs the first down and let them kneel the clock down to 8 seconds where Harrison Butker kicked the game-sealing field goal. Now I have a couple of thoughts on this. Was this objectively the right call to make with the ref standing literally right there? Sure. But also, for 58 minutes of gameplay, we were sitting witness to an amazing game, free of a lot of penalty calls, and for a ticky-tack call like that to be made at that point in the game, just puts a damp towel over the entire night. And again, the refs aren't there to make sure the game is entertaining, they're there to enforce the rules, but that call ended up being the only holding call in the entire game, by either team. There were also many notable offenses in the following seasons that really turned people against the Chiefs. So let's go through some of these examples in no particular order, just as a refresher. Texans get flagged for unnecessary roughness. Texans get flagged for roughing the passer. The Bills not awarded the first down while Josh Allen is pushed over the first down line. Bengals get flagged for defensive pass interference on 4th and 16 while trailing 25-23 late in the fourth quarter. So with all that being said, let's go to the hate meter and check in on where we're at with the Kansas City Chiefs. With another Super Bowl win under their belt, the refs leaving their imprint throughout the entire 2022-2023 playoff run, more primetime games, and more noise from fans, I think we can confidently move the Chiefs up to the Aaron Rodgers tier of hatred. As we move on to the 2023 Chiefs season, we're met with a down year from Mahomes. With 4,183 yards, only 27 touchdowns to 14 picks, a career high, a lot of Mahomes' metrics this year were down. His receiving core was not great, with only a rookie Rashee Rice and Justin Watson providing support for Mahomes and Kelsey. But the season was not lost, because the Chiefs' defense stepped up in a big way. Ranking second in points against, this Spags-led defense was elite, with players like Chris Jones, Trent McDuffie, George Karlaftis, and more help around the edges from players like Justin Reed, L'Jarius Sneed, Drew Tranquill, Leo Chenal, Mike Dana, Charles Omenihu, and others. The regular season was a worse record that the Chiefs have had during this run, going 11-6, but that still gave them the first place in the AFC West and a frigid matchup against the Dolphins in the first round of the playoffs. Now, before I move on to the 2023 playoff run, I wanted to bring up the sixth common complaint, which is Mr. Mahomes himself. Cue the Harvey Dent quote. There had been a bit of animosity brewing towards Mahomes in previous seasons, and there will always be hate for a player like Mahomes because, just like Brady before him, he's constantly winning and performing like one of the best quarterbacks in the league. But there was something that happened this season that kind of tipped it over the edge. On December 10th, 2023, following a Chiefs loss to the Bills where the Chiefs had a sick lateral touchdown wiped off the board late in the fourth quarter because Kadarius Toney lined up off sides, Mahomes and Josh Allen met midfield as quarterbacks always do, and Mahomes took that opportunity to complain to Josh Allen about that final call. This was a terrible look. I mean, even if you're a Chiefs fan, you have to admit that. He talked more about the call in the post-game presser, and the NFL community had a field day. In this past season, in a divisional round matchup against the Texans, with 12 minutes left in the fourth quarter, as Mahomes was running out of bounds, he flopped and fell on the ground after getting pushed by a Texans DB. Again, like a terrible look. The reason why this kind of stuff makes people so mad is that we all know Mahomes is great, and we don't understand why he has to constantly complain and especially resort to flopping in a high-stakes situation like that. The entire 2023-2024 Chiefs playoff run quickly leads me to the seventh common complaint, which is expected outcomes. In what was a down year for the Chiefs, offensively speaking, they were still able to win their division, win convincingly in the wildcard round, eke out another close win against the Bills after a missed game-tying field goal attempt by Tyler Bass, another close win against the Ravens where the defense stepped up and held the Ravens to only one touchdown, and found themselves in the Super Bowl again for the fourth time in 5 years. Fans were starting to get major Chiefs fatigue and becoming real sick of seeing the Chiefs just do this over and over again, especially in what was the worst offense of the Mahomes era till that point in his career. So in the rematch of Super Bowl 54, the Chiefs and the 49ers matched up at Allegiant Stadium to see if the Chiefs could get their second straight ring or if Kyle Shanahan could finally make it over the hump. Well, the Chiefs won and managed to pull out the win in overtime. And I think this thread sums up the feeling perfectly. The Chiefs and Mahomes have reached the point where it just feels inevitable. No matter how slow they start or the turnovers they have, they always just seem to pull out the win, just like Tom Brady and the Pats did. And everyone was really sick of seeing it happen, even if it wasn't against their own team. So taking a temperature check of the hate meter towards the end of the 2023-2024 season, we've again moved up another notch to the Vontaze Burfict tier of hatred. That's pretty bad. But as we enter the last season, let's see how each of the common complaints arose to bring them to the master level of hatred. The 2024 season was a weird one for the Chiefs. Sure, they went 15-2, securing first place in the AFC, but it's not like they were dominant. The Chiefs won 12 games by one score, and some of these wins bring up the eighth and final complaint on the list, which is the Chiefs' black magic. Let's look at some of the ways that the Chiefs won their games this year. Literally in the first game of the season, on what would have been a game-tying touchdown, Isaiah Likely was out of bounds by a literal inch. In Week 10 against the Broncos, the Chiefs blocked Denver's 35-yard game-winning field goal attempt to secure the 16-14 win. In Week 14 against the Chargers, backup Chiefs kicker Matthew Wright doinked in a 31-yard game-winning field goal with only 1 second left on the clock. To win that many games by that slim of margins, there has to be some black magic going on that the rest of the NFL hasn't tapped into yet. And like I promised earlier, let's go over each of the common complaints and see how they all took place this season. Overexposure. The Chiefs played 7 primetime games. Announcer glaze. Here's an example. Outside characters. Taylor Swift shown on TV? People are mad. Insufferable fan base. When you win that many games in a season by those type of circumstances, you're going to get on people's nerves. The refs. I mentioned some examples earlier. Here are some more. Patrick Mahomes. I mentioned the flopping incident before, but here are some of the reactions to that flop, like on the Detroit Lions subreddit. Expected outcomes. And as we move on to the playoffs, where the Chiefs won their first 2 playoff matchups against the Texans and the Bills, People were pissed that the Chiefs were again going to be featured in a Super Bowl. Not only were they featured, there was endless talk of the first three-peat in NFL history, which just added way more fuel to the fire. I mean, after their win against the Bills to send them to the Super Bowl, here are some of the comments we got in that post-game thread. So even before their Super Bowl loss, which many NFL fans found absolutely euphoric, the hate meter reached the final notch, the Tom Brady, Bill Belichick era Patriots. Is this sort of a compliment in a way? Yeah, because if you've reached this point, you're likely a dominant team that has seen consistent success. But most NFL fans won't see it like this. Rather, they'll focus on all the other aspects of the team that piss them off and are annoying to them. So looking towards the future, what can happen for this hate meter to start to go back down and for this team to eventually be appreciated? The number one thing is time. A lot of time is going to need to pass for people to start to appreciate this 7-season stretch and accept that we were witnessing greatness. Or Mahomes is going to need to retire. Anecdotally speaking, I hated Tom Brady and I hated the Pats like every other guy. But with the more time that passed, and with Tom Brady eventually moving on to Tampa and winning a ring there, I thought to myself, why was I hating the entire time anyways? Same thing goes for the Big Three in Miami, same thing goes for the Kevin Durant Warriors, and I'm going to go out on a limb here and say, same thing for this Chiefs team. Some of you might disagree with me, and that's fine. But I want to make sure I learn from my past mistakes and try to enjoy this as much as possible while I'm here to witness it.